Good evening, welcome to Enemy Within on peoplesinternetradio.com. It's Tuesday night, the 25th of August, and we're in the middle of good old British winter time. Don't know about where you are, but I've been looking for thermal socks all day today. And I'd like to say good evening to Tom. Good evening, mate.
Hello. How's it going, Andy?
Oh, it's all going fantastic, especially tonight, because we've got what promises to be a very interesting guest. We've got a guy called Bernie Gadd. Hey there, Bernie.
Hello, Andy. Hello, Tom.
Hi, mate.
Hello, mate.
So, would you like to give the listeners a bit of an introduction and to who you are and where you come from with your research, Bernie?
Right. Well, I have to go back to being an 11-year-old child, to be honest with you, to start it off. I'm a victim of abuse myself. I was abused separate occasions. The first occasions was at school by, am I allowed to mention names or not? I mean, I'm happy to, but...
well, this name's mentioned in your book anyway, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, well, I was abused by a young boy called Joey Walford. He was about 5 years older than me. Mm-hmm. I was a bit of a wuss at school, I've got to be honest with you. And I used to get beat up on a daily basis, in fairness. Joey Walford sort of rescued me from this. But he took a sinister stance on it, you know. It went from being bullied to being sexually abused, if you like. 3 occasions he did it. And he also went on further than that to introduce me to Roger Gleaves. Roger Gleaves, probably best known as a self-styled Bishop of Medway. Bloody bishop, I don't know. He's a notorious paedophile. He adopted me. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I've looked through the one of the links that I think it was you gave me, and the 14 times that he's mentioned in Hansard.
Oh, absolutely. He's been mentioning Hansard on many occasions. Uh-huh. The main reason being because a lot of local councils in London gifted him properties so he could abuse children in them.
Wow.
Camden, Islington, Hackney, Lambeth. Sorry, yeah, they were all giving him places to do these things. You know, we're talking about young children here. You know, I mean, myself, I was 11 years old. There was they went all the way up to sort of 17, 18, 19, and 20 years old.
Yeah.
You know, but once they reach 20 years old, of course, they're no longer of use.
No.
If you like.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've read the first 3 chapters of your book. They're online, aren't they?
Say again?
I say I've read the first 3 chapters of your book. You've published them. You're publishing it online as you go along, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, with the book, I thought I'd do something slightly different. Uh-huh. My book, get it published and make loads of money out of it. I didn't want to do that at the end of the day. I wanted to write my book live online and let people read it while I'm writing it. It costs them nothing, and they can listen or they don't have to listen. It's complete and utterly up to them, isn't it? You know, but it is going to go on. It's going to be a fascinating read, in fairness. Once the Gleaves story is out of the way, which I think in itself is an absolutely mental situation for an 11-year-old boy to be in at the best of times. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
I had no idea about sex or anything like that when I was 11-year-old, and what happened to me was a complete and utter shock. You know, I mean, that dirty bastard. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be swearing, should I?
Quite understandable.
He's an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is it okay to tell people where these chapters are?
Yeah.
If you search on Facebook, if you're on there, Is This It? A Journey of Fear? And you'll find the first 3 chapters of Bernie's book on there. And it's very well written, and it certainly makes you think.
So what happened to this bishop?
Say
Sorry,
it again, Tom.
Yeah, what happened to the bishop? Was he convicted later?
Eventually. I mean, he wasn't convicted of what happened to me because I was never allowed to report it.
Right.
Like I say, I was 11 years old. I was abducted no more than 100 yards, if that, from my house. Something was thrown over my head. I've got no idea what it was. I'm assuming it was some kind of a blanket or something like that. And I was thrown into a vehicle. I'm not even sure what the vehicle was. And I was taken to the house and I was put in a room with a stinking dirty mattress on the floor. Which is one of the main things that I remember. The other main thing that I remember is it had what you call, it was like an attic window. It was a very high up window. It wasn't a sash window. It was one of those, you get like a dormer. You know what a dormer bungalow is?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's the sort of room it was. There were 3 abusers, I remember. All of them were wearing masks. All of them. They're more commonly used for anonymous now, but back in that day, you could buy them for about a penny from a sweet shop, and they used them on Guy Fawkes night. When you used to take the guy out.
I'm with it, yeah.
Which is the sort of thing that I used to do, I'm no different from what kids are now, just a tree climbing, I would say bike riding child, but I didn't have a bike in them days because it was the rich kids that had bikes, in fairness.
Oh, I get you, yeah.
I was raped. I was penetratively raped. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm going to be honest with you. My brain closed off on so many occasions. It could be that I was drugged. It could be, I don't know. I was 11 years old. I didn't even know what drugs were. Well, you know what I mean? So whether I was,
yeah, that's something that happens to people when they're going through such horrible traumas. Their brain tends to shut it down and shut it out and put it away in a box, and it's kind of gone from your conscious memory, isn't it?
It was absolutely gone, and I'm going to be honest with you. All these years, and there is a gap of 40 years since it happened to when I started investigating it again, because I would, like any parent, I would kill to save my children, to protect my children. I would do it. I wouldn't even think twice.
Yeah, that's natural parental instinct, isn't it?
And this is what thought came into my head. Mm-hmm. I started doing a Stinson Hunter, if you like. I started pretending to be someone I wasn't, and I started hunting down paedophiles online, because they're very easy to find. On Facebook, there's so many of them about, it's unreal. Right. Absolutely unreal. I can honestly tell you, right, they go on about thousands of paedophiles in this country. Mm-hmm. Just from what I've seen, we're talking hundreds of thousands of paedophiles. Hundreds of thousands of paedophiles. Really? Whoa. Absolutely. And these people are on Facebook. You've probably got them on your friends list, mate. On my friends list, who I don't put on my friends list. And a lot of the people that I have met, a lot of the people that are on my friends list, I've met them. Uh-huh. At protests and things like that, I go to protests a lot. I've been to Halifax with Kaz. I've been down to London with Brendan McNamara, and I go to these things because I truly believe that it will eventually make a difference. But there's too much apathy in this country. People have got the best standard of living this country's ever had. You know what I mean? And they don't want to lose it. And they're scared. So rather than come out on the streets and protest with us, what they do is they sit in their house and pretend it's not happening. But it sound really stupid, but it doesn't take the Metropolitan Police to find it out. The resources that the Metropolitan Police have got, they've investigated numerous things. All they come up is little scapegoats. Me and Birdie, do you know something? If me and her were police officers, we'd have this country to rights now. I'm telling you, we would have sorted it. We'd have sorted it.
Yeah. Well,
you got. Go on, sorry.
So no problem, mate. The reason I'm jumping in is because police not having the resources is...
No, they have got the resources. All they need to do is go out and question people. It doesn't cost money to question someone.
Yeah, what I mean is they're making that as an excuse for not investigating these crimes.
It is an excuse.
They're using it as an excuse for not investigating fraud. Yet we saw the other week when the bailiffs, or alleged bailiffs, went round to snatch Tom Crawford's house, they spent what must have been at least £500,000.
A civil matter that did not need all them police officers. Did not need them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That should have been a civil matter, and that's it. End of story.
Absolutely.
They didn't need all them. You know what I mean?
It's like all the police. It's like all the police that they put out to protests. Needless police. For known peaceful protests that have happened.
We stopped London on the last one we went to in April. We came down Whitehall from Trafalgar Square and we was walking in the street. We stopped the buses, we stopped the taxis, we stopped everything. Yeah? There were no trouble. The police allowed us to do it. So at what point do they start kicking off?
Mm. Well, you usually find it's either the police pull a woman to one side and start roughing her up, which then it makes everybody's blood boil and it boils over, or there's some sort of agitator in the crowd who starts some trouble, who's probably nobody in the crowd knows.
With the best will in the world and the most peaceful protest, you're always going to get somebody that wants to kick off.
Mm.
And do you know, Andy, I'm saying this, is it such a bad idea for people to kick off? If it's going to get action, is it a bad idea? I don't know.
Well, I think the trouble is, Bernie, I see absolutely where you're coming from, and given what you've been through, I can understand those feelings, but I think what we're all about on this station is seeking solutions and seeking peaceful solutions. And
absolutely, I agree with you, and that's why I do it.
If we resort to violence, we're only dragging ourselves down to their level, aren't we?
Well, that's exactly what they want.
Hmm.
So, sorry, Bernie. Yeah, that's exactly. I was just going to say that's exactly what they want. That's why they put these instigators into crowds to try and start trouble, because then they can say, "Oh, this protest was only trouble," and then they can get rid of the actual point that this protest was about. And all that's wrote about in the press is just the violence.
I've seen it. I've seen people there. I mean, in April, we had a great protest. We had a great rally. There was like a carnival atmosphere going on in Parliament Square. Mm-hmm. But there was just this one little faction that needed to kick off, get drunk and start causing bother, started abusing, Brenda, who in fairness, is not a young woman anymore.
No.
Because they knew we was all going to stick up for Brenda if it come down to it. But luckily, the police identified it and they got in between. That's not a united front against child abuse. What were they doing in our protest? Were they put in there? I don't know.
It seems ridiculous.
Well, protesters were violent.
Yeah, well, they know that deep down that they're guilty of sin. They know how involved in all this abuse that they are, and they're trying to take the scent off. It wouldn't surprise me if something mega happens in this country sometime between now and September, just to take the heat off them. It would not surprise me. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist in all reality. I'm not. I deal with facts. Everyone's got their own ideas about certain things that have happened in the world and stuff like that. But I only deal with what I can see. You know what I mean? Absolutely. That's all I ever talk about is what I know is real. Mm-hmm. There's many people that have posted online, and in fairness, when you hear about single things that happen, like a child goes missing, everyone's, oh, bloody hell, a child's gone missing, and everyone's up in arms about it, and rightly so, yeah, but it's forgotten about as soon as the funerals. If a child's been found dead and the funeral's over, it's all forgotten about until something else happens and then there's matches to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You talk You talk about the numbers of children that go missing from the care care homes in this country. I tell you what, it'll make people sit up and look and listen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people have had children taken off of them, put in care, and they've never heard from them again. You cannot just disappear off the face of the earth. Ain't possible. There's got to be a paper trail. There's so much CCTV and stuff like that. I'm sorry. These children are being either murdered, they're being trafficked, or they're being taken to other countries and sold on. I've got no idea. I mean, I don't know. Child slave labour, is it still go on? I don't know.
It seems
Go on.
It seems the people trafficking is quite a big business these days, and I suppose it's or any combination of the above really, because I think all of those things are going on to greater or lesser extent these days.
Right. Well, let's give you a little example. Right. You got children that have gone missing and they've never been heard of again. They've never been seen again from children's homes. Right. They don't want to go missing, but they have gone missing. Yeah. Right. Then you've got a man like Ronald Biggs who wanted to disappear. He wanted to disappear. He didn't want to be found again. Yeah. They knew where he was from day one. They could have come and got him any time they want and made numerous efforts to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If somebody can escape from prison and be found within 2 days, how can a child not be? The reason he's not be is because he's not here.
Yeah. Or there's no will to find where that child has gone.
Right. A child is not physically capable of dealing with the elements. No. And this country has got every element going. If they go missing in the summer, then fine. If they go missing in winter, it's a death sentence. If a child's wandering the streets, he's going to end up with it because the elements are going to get him.
Yeah.
So they'll find a body. There are no bodies. These children have not just died. These children have been taken, and there are many, many, many examples of it. You've only got to look. I've done it. I've been doing this since March, and I've got numerous stuff that, in fairness, people that have been on your show have talked about. Well, they talk about certain issues. I'm bringing it all together. I'm going to tell you about people like Bullet Forsyth, who was murdered for covering up, not for covering up, sorry. He was going to expose the abuse that was going on in Lambeth. Senior officials within the Lambeth Council, like Ted Knight, and some of his bully boys, they had, how on earth he wouldn't have known this, I don't know. But there was a basement underneath Lambeth Town Hall that was used as a dungeon, right? Children were being taken from care homes like Angel Road, and they were being put in there, and they were being abused. They were being raped. They were being murdered. How can that happen in a council building? There's evidence to prove it. There was files that the Daily Mirror were in possession of from from an inquiry that was made into Lambeth Council, and Lambeth Council are very, very, very well linked with Islington. At one point I actually thought Ted Knight and Margaret Hodge were married. There you go. That's how closely related they are.
Wow.
Just on the subject of missing kids, I've mentioned it a few times on this show, but when I was at school, I must have been about 10 or 11 at the time, maybe younger, 9 or 10 maybe. The police officer came in, the Say No to Strangers police officer. He comes in and he shows a list, and this was a list from the last 20 years at the time of missing kids that have never been found. And there must have been 50 or 60 kids on there. Never been found. Just went missing. Never been found. No body.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming I'm a bit older than you, Tom. We didn't have the couple that came in and did the stranger danger talk, because paedophiles weren't, I don't even know if it was a word back in the 1960s and early 70s. I don't even know if it was, but you've got the likes of Keith Bennett, who was a victim of the Moors murderers. He's never been found since 1960. And what? We're talking 53 years since he went missing, and they still haven't found his body. They know where he is. They know he's on the moors somewhere, on Saddleworth Moor near Manchester, but they can't find him. And will they ever find him? No, because one of them's dead, Myra Hindley, and the other bloke's a fruitcake. He ain't going to say nothing to anyone. He's got no reason at all to open up now. no reason at all, and he won't. You know, and you know, as evil as Myra Hindley and Brady were, the people now are just as evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I mean, I've been reading quite a bit of stuff in the last couple of years that suggest that Hindley and Brady didn't just work on their own; they were connected to a lot of others.
Well, knowing what we know now, is it so surprising?
Of course not.
You know, of course not. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, Andy. I mean, the Hindley and Brady thing, I'm talking from historical knowledge that I know of. It's not something that I have actually investigated, but, you know, everyone knows who they are. Everyone knows what they did. And, like I say, you can't just disappear. You can't just disappear. A child don't do that. They get cold. They get hungry. They want their mum.
Well, at one time in my life, I did try it as an adult, and it ain't that easy as an adult. So I know it's damn near impossible as a child, unless
Impossible
you've got someone.
being the word.
Unless you've got someone who is hiding you, and that's what we're getting into, aren't they? The people who've abducted the children, made them disappear. They've obviously got them in some sort of place where they can't be found, and God knows what's happening to them.
And do you know something? A lot of the places that they're in are just normal houses on normal streets. You know, when we went down to London last time, I took Birdie over to South London with me, right? We were looking for the house, and I'm going to be honest with you, I couldn't actually remember where it was. I remember the drain pipe outside the house, and I remember there was a tree. And what I also remember very, very, very clearly was a wall in front of the window. You couldn't actually get in between. It was so close to the window, you couldn't actually walk down it. You know, you couldn't walk between the wall and the window. And there was many of them down there. In fairness, when we went down there, there was many like that. Now, remembering I've been gone from London since 1980, I think. You know, I've been away from London for many, many years, and things have changed. But we actually managed to get hold of a documentary, or part of a documentary called Johnny Go Home, which is the story of Rod. Well, it weren't actually the story of Roger Gleaves. He just ended up being in it. It was about runaways in London. It starts off with a young lad called Tommy Wiley coming off of a train at King's Cross Station. Or was it Euston? Actually, it was Euston. Sorry. Get me facts right. It was Euston Station. You saw it at the start of it on CCTV. He was being watched. So even back then in 1974, 75, you know, CCTV was available to the police, because you can see perfectly him getting off the train with his little suitcase and walking towards the main station. Now, the police actually stopped him and asked him. They took him off, and he was put in Centre Point in London. Centre Point is a homeless place, you know. It's not where you put a 12-year-old boy.
Not really.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He should have been put in police custody and returned back to Glasgow, where he come from. Because let me tell you, Tommy Wiley ended up being almost as bad.
Really?
Because he was groomed.
Right. Yes.
He was not only groomed; he was groomed to become a groomer. And when you see him in Johnny Go Home, he's just a little boy. He's just a little boy with his little suitcase getting off the train.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
I got those links for that off your group site there, and I haven't had a chance to watch it, but I'm pretty sure I remember that when it was on television, and it was really disturbing.
Well, let me tell you something about Johnny Go Home, right? You can't find that anywhere. You try to find it, you can't. We found it because someone had posted it on YouTube, right? He's the only person, as far as I'm aware, that's actually got it. You can't get it anywhere. Birdie did a Freedom of Information Act to try and get it. She couldn't get it.
Really?
It's locked. Lots of stuff to do with Roger Gleaves is locked by the courts. His first offence in 1959, he was arrested for abusing a young lad in the Army Cadets, in the Army Corps back then. Sergeant Major Gleaves, as he was. And, hang on, sorry.
Well, it's okay. Take your time.
Right. Just the name of the bloke kills me. Right. Now, he abused a young boy, and he was sentenced to something stupid. You know what I mean? I think it was 3 years he got. He was released. Well, I suppose back in 1961, I suppose 3 years in prison was a decent length of time. But you know, when you think it's like for hurting children, it's not. It's nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's a different. You know, he went on from there, and he's murdered. You know, he's been involved. I can't accuse him of murder because there's no actual proof that he did murder, right? But there was a young boy, Billy McPhee, right? Now, Billy McPhee was at one of Gleaves' hostels in Hackney, right? And he was murdered by people that worked at this Hackney hostel that belonged to Roger Gleaves, right? The wife of one of the guys in the hostel gave a statement saying that Gleaves was sat in there watching him being tortured and he was laughing. So as far as I'm concerned, he's as much involved in that murder as the guys that actually ended Billy's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, people use it, I didn't do it. You know, the Cook gang, they're just, in fact, they're more notorious. They are more notorious. You know, they killed Jason Swift.
Yeah.
They were taken to court. I mean, they didn't just kill him, over time. They murdered, you know, they abused him, they raped him, they swapped him, they sold him, they hired him. I mean, that poor boy, 14 years old, gone through that. I mean, I know what it's like to go through 2 days. I mean, this boy went through months there.
A tune on for a couple of minutes, and then we'll drop the call and call you back.
Seek the truth in the eyes of our children. Nothing can hide their despair. There is no way for us to regain their innocence. We can search, but we know it's not there. But when you play your games, you must understand there is a price so high. The tide is in your hands. You say you won, but I say you're wrong. The loss of a child is no victory for anyone.
Good evening, welcome back to People's Internet Radio. Sorry for that. the old saying goes, you start getting flack when you're directly over the target, and I think that might be what went on there. So many apologies, listeners. I hope that you enjoyed that tune from the Force there. And we managed to get connected back with Bernie. Hi, Bernie.
Hi.
Yeah, it appears they didn't like us talking about Jason Swift. So,
well, I don't think they like us talking about it. I don't think Jason Swift's the issue. I think it's when you start talking about people like Margaret Hodge and Tony Blair and people, they start panicking, don't they?
Absolutely,
you know, the sort of names they don't want publicly aired. You know, but it's going to happen, unfortunately. If they weren't such dirty twats, then we wouldn't be having it, would we? We wouldn't have to do this.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, right. Now, what I was saying, Sidney Cook's gang.
Yeah.
They were found guilty at their trial of manslaughter. Now, it was Lenny Smith's flat, but Jason Swift also lived there, by the way. He was taken to Croydon Station and handed over to Sidney Cook. Now, during one of his, I don't even like to call it this, but this is his words. It's like during a sex game, he strangled Jason Swift, and unfortunately Jason died as a result of it.
Yeah.
But were they done for murder? No, they were done for manslaughter. You've got to ask yourself, at what point does manslaughter and murder cross, where's the line? Where does the line stop? So because someone doesn't mean to kill someone, they can do what the hell they like to them, but they die in the process, and it's not murder. Yeah. Because in their mind, they didn't mean to kill him. Well, they did mean to kill him. And I'll tell you why they meant to kill him. Because there was other victims.
Yeah.
Up to 17 possible victims. There is evidence to suggest Vishal Malhotra was murdered by the Cook gang.
Yeah.
He was a young lad that went to, they were celebrating, I don't like using the word prince, but he is the prince, I suppose, so I've got to say it. He went to celebrate with his family Prince Charles's wedding to Diana. So we're going back to 1981,
wasn't it?
Was it 81? That's right. Sorry, I apologise.
Yeah.
Now, on his way home, he disappeared. Now, they found his remains in West Sussex, a place called Rogate. Now, there was a fair in the vicinity of Barnes Common, which is very close to where Vishal went missing.
Right.
And they found his body down near Rogate. At the same time, when they found his body, that same fair that was in Barnes was down in Rogate. Now, to me, that's evidence. That is evidence. That is direct evidence. I don't believe in coincidences, Andy. I do not. Like I said to you the other day when I was talking to you, a coincidence is when me and you come on and talking on Skype or whatever, and we've got the same T-shirt on. That's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Anything more than that, it's not coincidence. It's more sinister than that. Now, Vishal, they've never ever found the culprit who did murder him. I sincerely believe it was Sidney Cook. I've no doubt in my mind it was Sidney Cook.
Yeah.
But he never got arrested for it. And let's be honest, historically, people have used the most ridiculous alibis and got away with it. Now, Sidney Cook got away with it because the bloke in charge of the fair was his alibi. He said he was there. He weren't nowhere else. I could say that. I can go and say, someone's done something. I'll say, no, he was here. So is that good enough? What about forensic evidence? What about CCT evidence? Fingerprints. Look under the fingernails. You can't touch a person. If you grab a person violently, in any way, mean or form, you are going to get some kind of evidence on you. It's either going to stick to you through clothing, or it's going to be under your fingernails, through skin, blood, whatever. You know what I mean? But there will be some kind of evidence there. But they never did it. The same happened with a man called James Shackleton. And I'll go on about Shackleton a lot because he was never been convicted of serious stuff. He's been arrested on many occasions. He was arrested 4 times for murder.
Yeah.
Walked out every single time. First occasion, Rachel Nickel on Wimbledon Common. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Second time, was, the gay
Colin Island.
Colin, it was Colin Island. Thank you, Jason. It was the Colin Island murders in London, right? On the third occasion, he was arrested for he was arrested for sticking a glass in a broken bottle into a man's neck. The man died. Now there was enough evidence for the Crown Prosecution Service, or whatever it was called then, to take him to court.
Yeah.
But during the trial, the judge directed the jury to find him not guilty because of lack of DNA evidence. But the prosecution service in the first place had the evidence to take him to court. The fourth one, and probably the most famous one, was the murder of Jill Dando.
Yeah.
He openly admits that he was outside her house on the morning when she was murdered, shaking, sweating. Well, let me tell you what his alibi was. Let me tell you what his excuse was, and you tell me if it should be able to stand up.
Well,
right?
First, before you do that, Bernie, why don't you tell them what his occupation was, what his job, his business was?
Well, James Shackleton's an undertaker. You know, he's an expert at getting rid of bodies. You know what I'm saying? After I've told you about this, I'm going to give you a little bit more information about him because I think it's very relevant. So he went half a mile away because he was desperate for the toilet. He went half a mile away down to the park in Fulham, went to the toilet, and while he was there, some bloke decided he wanted to have sex with James Shackleton. Now, he's not a good-looking man at the best. I've seen pictures of him. He's not a good-looking man at all, you know what I'm saying? But he got scared and ran away, even though he is actually homosexual anyway. Not that it matters, you know what I'm saying? But he would be attracted to men. Mm-hmm. And like I say, he's not the best looking man in the world, so the chance of him running away from getting pulled is unreal to me. So he's done a runner, and that's why he's ended up shaking and sweating outside Jill Dando's house. Yeah? Mm-hmm. You'd have thought if he was that scared that this bloke was going to try and get hold of him and he didn't want it, he'd have got in his car and drove straight home. But no, he decided to wait at the bus stop outside her house. Now, as we know, later on, Jill Dando was shot in the head.
Mm-hmm. An assassination.
It was an assassination.
It's a clear assassination. That's exactly how you carry out an assassination. One shot to the head and walk away. There's no forensics.
Yeah. If it had been anything less than that, mm-hmm. they'd have emptied the gun on her. Someone that was scared would have been emptying the gun on her. You know what I'm saying? Perspective. James Shackleton and Roger Gleaves were business partners. I've got documentation where they've got the same address, the same phone number and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I said, go on, carry on, Jason.
Well, just the point that I was going to make is that if he's an undertaker, firstly, you don't go looking for wood to build your own coffins if you're an undertaker. Simply doesn't happen. And also, secondly, like you said, it's an ideal way to be able to get rid of any small bodies that you might have hanging about, or, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true, and that's what I believe has happened. I think the likes of Sidney Cook, Roger Gleaves and that, they were supplying children. They were picking them up, runaways and vulnerable children, and they were supplying them to a more sinister group of people, if you like, and they were protecting them because, you know, with the best will in the world, that is not an alibi, is it? That is not an alibi.
No, it's ridiculous.
It wouldn't stand up now. If my son came home and gave me an alibi like that about something that he'd done, I'd laugh at him. And he knows. You know what I mean? Yeah. And in fairness, and what I'm going to say to you now is that I actually believe that the copper that arrested, that was in charge of the Jill Dando murder, a certain
Hamish
Campbell, thank you. I went a bit nervous then. Right. So Hamish Campbell was in charge of the Jill Dando murder, mm-hmm. right? He was also in charge of the Rachel Nickel murder. So he knew James Shackleton. Mm-hmm. He's arrested him twice. He also arrested a man called Barry George twice as well. He arrested Barry George for the same 2 murders as he arrested James Shackleton for. Now, there's no reason to believe that Shackleton and Barry George knew each other.
Right.
There's no evidence to even suggest that Barry George was even involved in any of these murders. He was convicted of one of them, and he was jailed for it.
Yeah.
But he was eventually exonerated after, was it 9 years in prison, I think it was.
Yeah, but it's not innocent enough though, is it? Because they're refusing to give him compensation after he's spent 9 years in prison.
No, he seriously was on one. He wanted Barry George to take the fall for it all. He always said it was Barry George that did that. You know what I mean? But Hamish Campbell, let's look at Hamish Campbell for a second, right? He was a very, very senior police officer. Mm-hmm. He was allegedly that good that he was in charge of several operations like Fernbridge and Fairbank, Fairbank was the predecessor to Fernbridge. Mm-hmm. He was also in charge of the Jill Dando murder. He was also in charge of the investigation into Madaline McCann on this side of the water. Not once has he ever made a single arrest of any consequence. Mm-hmm. The only arrest that he actually got away with doing was Barry George himself. But Barry George was proven to be innocent.
Why has there never been another appeal for information after Barry George was released? Why was there no appeal for information again? Another Crime Watch reconstruction, mass appeal for information again?
I think I can answer that. I believe that after the appeal, the conviction was quashed, the police made a statement saying that they weren't looking for anybody else.
Because they believed he did it still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hamish Campbell was convinced, but there is another reason why nothing was ever done after that. Because, as you know, we'll be moving on to Jill Dando. What we've seen and what we've heard, I think it's pretty easy to guess. You know, the likes of Savile and people, Cyril Smith and people like that. She had all this evidence, and she's not the only one that had evidence against people that was mysteriously murdered. I touched on a man called Bullock Forsyth earlier on, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Now, Bullock Forsyth was a man that worked for Lambeth Council in London. Mm-hmm. Now, he went home from work one day, but within the days before he disappeared, he told someone at work about what he was going to do about this expose that he was going to do on the council, because he knew things about what was going on in the children's home and even in the town hall in Lambeth. I did mention it to you before, but I don't know if I was on air when I was talking about it. There's a dungeon, and it's been seen, it has been exposed. There was a dungeon underneath Lambeth Town Hall.
Wow.
There were manacles and stuff in it, mattresses. Children were being taken from children's homes. I'll even go as far as to say they was probably being taken from Angel Road Children's Home in Brixton, which is only a stone throw. It seriously is only a stone throw. You could sprint from Lambeth Town Hall to Angel Road Children's Home and probably not be out of breath. That's how close it is. You know, like I said to you, the man that was in charge of Angel Road was a man called Michael John Carroll. I've explained it. Was I on air when I was explaining that to you?
No, I believe that was what you explained to me a couple of days ago when we had a chat.
Right, well, Michael John Carroll was a convicted paedophile that was given the job of being the manager of Angel Road Children's Home. Right? Now, it was found out while he was at the children's home that he was a convicted paedophile. Excuse me. We're about Bullock.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Bullock Forsyth, he was the head of housing. Now, he had this in Lambeth. It was actually, he worked at Lambeth Council. Uh-huh. Now, he went home after he'd made these allegations to one of his co-workers. And there was actually a Crime Watch program about it. And you can find it on YouTube. Just type in Bullock Forsyth murder on Crime Watch and it'll come up. You can watch it yourself. But on the day that he died, now the man never took a day off work. Never. Mm-hmm. You could set your clock by him, but he never went to work. There were 3 men in suits and ties seen coming out of his flat carrying files and a briefcase. And later on that day, the same guy that had seen them also saw 2 men in the same kind of suits and ties sat in a car. It was a Ford Orion outside Bullock's house. Well, that night, Bullock's flat was set on fire. When the fire brigade got into there, they found that his head was smashed in. He'd actually been attacked and his head was smashed in. And the house was set on fire. You know, again, no one was ever apprehended for his murder. Nobody. Mm-hmm. You know, and this was in 1993. DNA was well on its way in then. You know, it's very hard. You know, if someone killed someone now, they would find them 9 times out of 10 because even the slightest speck of DNA and the piece have got you.
Yeah,
you know?
My dad always jokes. He says, if you're going to commit a murder these days, you've got to do it in a spacesuit. Because it's like you say, any speck, they'll have you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little anecdote about it. The best weapon you can use for killing someone is a frozen leg of lamb, because you can always defrost it and eat it afterwards.
But the only other way is the assassination method, which I mentioned. One shot to the head and walk away. Very little forensic.
I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. But the thing is, right? If everyone gets a bullet through the head, it's going to start to sort of have some kind of correlation pattern, whatever you want to call it. You know, but you know, you've got the likes of Daniel Morgan, who was a private investigator. He got an axe through his head. He was about to expose corruption within the police.
Yes.
Yeah. A guy that was arrested for murdering him happened to be a police officer, serving police officer in the Metropolitan Police. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, he was found not guilty, you know, and to all intents and purposes, fair enough. But what happened next was absolutely crazy. He was given Daniel Morgan's job in that private detective agency. The man that was tried for murdering him.
What?
Absolutely. This is all public domain. Anyone can find this stuff out.
Yeah. I mean, when I first talked to you the other day, Bernie, I knew that the story that you'd got to give us was really hot stuff, because Jason did mention a few bits when he was on with us before. And by the way, thank you, Jason, for joining us tonight. I know you've had a terrible couple of weeks, some dreadful stuff been happening to you, and bless you for joining us, mate. Thank you. And also being our most prolific enemy within guests 3 times in the space of about 10 days, mate. Brilliant going.
Yeah, you'll be sick of me soon.
No, not at all, mate. Doing a good job. So, yeah, sorry, carry on, Bernie, please.
Right, so, you know, I mean, as Tom, hang on, let me get this one off so I can hear properly then. As Tom was saying, we're talking about assassinations here, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. But you're spot on. There should be a correlation that they say when there's so many the same type of murder. Obviously, you're not going to get the culprit or the man who shot the gun, but you go, hang on a minute, is this being controlled by a higher power here?
Right. Let me give you a list, Tom, because I tell you, you're going to find this amazing, right? I'm going to give you a list of people here, and I've done my research on this. You got a man called William Malcolm, was a member of the Sydney Cook gang. He threatened to go expose higher powers, higher up people that were involved in this stuff, right? He received a bullet through his head. Now, the man was a paedophile and he deserved to die. But the thing is, it's the reason why he died. I don't think he was killed because he was a paedophile. You know, if it's a revenge killing, he'd have been stabbed, he'd have been battered, they'd have done stuff to him. He got 1 bullet through the head, like you said, Tom. You know what that means.
Yeah.
You got Peaches Geldof. Peaches Geldof, we all know who she is. She's Bob Geldof's daughter. Now, she was a whistleblower, and she was about to expose stuff. She died before she got the chance to do it by drug overdose, right? Historically, drug overdoses have been used as a form of assassination. I've told you about Daniel Morgan. He got an axe for his head. I've told you about Bullet for Scythe. Again, he got smashed in the head and he had his house burnt down. Mm-hmm. Jill Dando, she got a bullet through the head. You know, you're starting to see a pattern people that are threatening to expose people. They're dying.
Well, unfortunately, it seems you can't get away with threatening to expose people. You either do it or you keep your gob shut. Because if you threaten, you'll get killed before you do it.
You die.
Yeah.
You do. It's absolutely proven. It's proven. You know what I'm saying? You start telling people that you're going to do it, and that's it. You've had it. Now, there is one exception to that. Very well-to-do man. He had no need to do any of this stuff. The only thing that Charles Hornby never had was little boys to play with. He had everything a person could possibly want. He was from a well-to-do family. There was a massive estate he had in Gloucester. He was on come to dinner terms with Prince Charles, for God's sake. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about the elite here. We're not talking, if you invited him, Andy, I don't think Prince Charles would turn up for tea at yours, would he?
Well, I can't see any scenario. I can't see any possible scenario where I'd want to do that. But yeah, even if I did, for some bizarre reason, send him an invite, I doubt we'd see him round for a cup of char now.
Right. Well, David Archer, Charles Hornby, and his team. Now they worked the meat rack in Piccadilly. Right. Now what that was is they used to pick up children, young boys, and they used to rent them out to businessmen. When I say rent them out, I mean pimp them. Yeah. They were used in child prostitution, but it was abuse. It weren't boys hanging on corners and picking up punters. They were being put on display in places like the Wimpy Bar in the window. They were all arrested. They was all charged, and they were all sentenced to different sentences of imprisonment. They all pleaded guilty. Well, they all appealed against their sentences. They weren't strong sentences. I think the longest one was 6 years. Hornby got one of the shorter ones of 2.5 years. But the point was, when they appealed against their sentences, they were quashed at the appeal court in London. They were quashed. They weren't lowered. They were quashed. They all left court. Now, you can ask yourself, why would that happen? I have a theory on that. Which again, there is evidence to prove it. David Archer was one of Hornsby's co-accused, and he said that he was going to give evidence, and quite substantial evidence by all accounts, that there were millionaires, titled peoples involved in it, and the name Lord Mountbatten was included in this. Now, Lord Mountbatten was Prince Charles's uncle.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
A bit of a playboy. By all accounts.
Murdered by the IRA.
He was murdered by the IRA, or was he murdered by the IRA and the British intelligence services on a joint effort? Because, there's evidence that Mountbatten was at a place called Kincora in Ireland. Now, Kincora is a children's home in Pimlico. Oh, God, I can't even think what it's bloody called now.
Dolphin Square.
You know where I'm on about.
Dolphin Square, Bernie.
Right. Now, he was... Dolphin Square, he was taken to Dolphin Square and he was taken to the old guest house. He was raped, he was abused. Now we had the likes of,
Leon Britton.
Yes. Leon Britton was actually found in the guest house with a child sat on his knee, but he was not convicted of it. It was the coppers phoned through to whoever they phoned through and they were told to leave it.
Sounds about right. We're talking about Kincora here, are we?
No, we were on about the girl guest house at that time, but I'm going to stay on Kincora. I'm going to stay on Kincora with it for a second because, there was stuff going on in Kincora. Now, I don't know if any of you know, well, I know you know about it, Jason, but I mean, like, a lot of people, especially out in civilian, in the world, they won't know about the, child sex abuse, the CSA inquiry that's going on at the moment. But Kincora is not allowed to be used. The Home Secretary has decided that Kincora is not to be used at the CSA inquiry. Now, Kincora on its own can bring down the government. It seriously can bring down the government. There's things that went on in Kincora that will stay secret and people, they'll never find out about it because it won't be made public through the CSA inquiry. inquiry, all you'll get is people like Richard Kerr, a very, very brave man, let's be honest about it. He's come over and he's
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm firmly of the opinion, Bernie, that all you guys who are exposing this, and with particular emphasis on those of you that are survivors of the abuse, yourself, Mickey, Brian, Claire, and all the other campaigners out there, you have my absolute respect. And I've always say to people, this is a tough subject to cover, but if you guys have got the backbone and the strength to stand up and talk about it, the least we can do is give you a platform to talk on.
You know, people keep saying to me about, you know, I've been warned by my friends to be careful what I'm saying because they've got an idea of the sort of things that happen, you know what I mean? But, you know, I'm not afraid. I ain't afraid at all. I'll take any battle on, you know what I'm saying? And I certainly will stick up for people that need sticking up for, and children need sticking up for. There's far too much apathy in this country. Like I said earlier on, you know, people have their little lives and they want to keep them to themselves. But, you know, at the end of the day, if everyone got off the backsides, took to the streets and protested, however way they feel they need to do it, then the rest of the world have got to look and see. You know, it's no good 500, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 people on the streets. We need hundreds of thousands of people on the street. We need everyone saying, you know, it's not happening anymore. But it will happen while you let it. 500 people, I've got all the respect in the world for 500 people. I've got all the respect in the world for 1,000 people. They're getting off their backsides. I go down to London. I travel down from Doncaster on the night bus. Sometimes I don't sleep for 2 days, you know, because I'm on the night bus. It's really hard to sleep anyway, you know what I'm saying? And I've got a whole day in London and I've got to come back again. I've done it twice and I'll do it again and I'll do it again and I'll do it again. You know what I mean? Because if I don't do it, I can't expect anyone else to do it.
No, that's brilliant.
You know,
I'm just looking at the time now, and it's 8:15. So how's about we play a little tune when we can all make ourselves a brew, have a wee break, whatever we need to do, and we'll be back in just over 3 minutes. Is that okay, guys? Hello, and welcome back to Enemy Within on peoplesinternetradio.com, where we are seeking solutions. And just a reminder for any of you, I know we're having problems with the site tonight, but if you can get on the site and you've got a few quid to spare to help us keep going, there's a donate button on there, and it would all be gratefully received. It helps us keep on the air. Well, most of the time anyway. We got cut off for a few minutes tonight, but thankfully we're back on, and we've still got Bernie with us. So are you ready to carry on, Bernie?
absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
I was just going to say before you go on, Bernie, to Andy, it's like you said earlier, you only get flack when you're over the target.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happens to sites like People's Internet Radio. It happens to another site that we're on Saturday afternoon, truthfrequencyradio.com, all the time. They get attacks all the time. And there's no reason for those attacks other than dodgy reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of our fellow hosts has been getting attacked almost daily just lately. Then the site's getting attacked or whatever's happened to the site. You know, we're all locked out, so hopefully that'll be back up and running soon. And yeah, I must just mention, following right after us, so stay tuned at 9 o'clock. The Graham Hart will be on till 11 o'clock, and they're talking up tonight about Miracle Mineral Solution, or MMS, with his guest Adam Abraham. So stay tuned for that one, folks. Sorry, fire away, Bernie.
Right. The next thing I want to touch on, and I don't want to go too much onto it because it doesn't concern me. In fairness, everyone knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Jimmy Savile link.
Yeah.
The reason I'm touching on it, and like people do know the story, but the reason I'm touching on it is because there is actually a definitive link to Roger Gleaves. They're both the same age group. They both come from Leeds. But Jimmy Savile's brother actually worked. I mean, everyone knows that Jimmy Savile worked at Broadmoor Mental Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that's public knowledge now.
Yeah.
His brother also worked at a mental hospital in South London, Southwest London, called Tooting Bec. Well, it's not called Tooting Bec now. The name's been changed to Springfield, but in the day it was known as Tooting Bec Mental Hospital. Now, John Saville worked at the hospital. He was convicted of being a paedophile before before the Saville stuff came out. Now, the reason that I'm bringing the Gleaves thing into it is because there was a company, a security company, who was in charge of the security at Tooting Bec Hospital.
Amiga. Omega.
It was Amiga, yeah. There's two. There's GB and Amiga. I'll get onto GB in a second. Now, Amiga Security was owned and run by not by James Shackett, by Roger Gleaves. So Roger Gleaves had ample opportunity to go into the mental hospital and abuse people. There is no evidence to suggest that he did, in fairness, but there were a lot of vulnerable. Married was in 1959. On the day he was married, that was when he was arrested for his first child abuse thing. His first conviction when he got the 3 years. It was on the day of his wedding.
Wow.
I'll tell you what, you try to find anything about that conviction, you can't. There's a block been put on it for 100 years. We're not allowed to know what he was convicted of or anything. Is that a cover-up? I think it is.
Well, what legit reason do you have to put an 80-year time?
80, sorry, yeah.
Or 80 year or 100 years. I was just going to say that sometimes it's 80, sometimes it's 100. What legitimate reason do you actually have to put that time space on it?
Because the reason they put it on is because there's information that's delicate and they don't want it getting out there. Now, after all this time, I really don't think it matters. I don't think even anyone cares. You know, you find out.
Sorry, they often try and say that it's for the victims. They try and say, oh, well, it's to protect the victims. And then at the same time, the victims are saying, release it. So it makes no.
So what about the victims? What about the victims of the Moors murderers? They were made quite public, and that was after Gleaves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, the victims now. How do we know about people like Martin Allen? How do we know about people like Vishal Malhotra? How do we know about people like Jason Swift? You know, because it's made public. It's made public, and it weren't made public by the people that did the offences. It was made public by the Crown, by the police, by the courts. So there's no reason why something that, as horrific as it probably was for the young lad, in terms of historical stuff that we know about, it wasn't as definitive as some of the ones now. You know, he's still alive, in fairness. I know he's still alive. Well, I'm saying he could be dead, I suppose. He could have died of natural causes, I suppose. I don't know. But, you know, if everything's gone well for him, he'd still be alive. He'd be an old fella, but he'll still be alive. Now, there is absolutely no reason for the court to protect Roger Gleaves now. If you can't find this stuff, does that mean that if a company goes to employ someone like him, then they can't find any criminal record for him?
You would think so, yeah.
You know, Roger Gleaves was a very serious businessman as well as being a paedophile. I mean, that man must have been minted, seriously minted. He had 5 hostels in London, all gifted by the local councils, yeah? The probation service, the social services and the housing department sent people to him to be housed.
So he was getting
nearly every single one of them.
Yeah, he was getting a fair whack of payment off each one of those authorities, wasn't he?
Housing benefit for each one of them. Mm-hmm. Housing benefit for each one of them. And they all ended up working for security companies.
Yeah.
And they were paying them, I think it was like 70 odd pence an hour. I bet the housing benefit was a lot more than that. You know, and it was board and lodgings. Now, when I was younger, board meant fed. As far from what I can gather, and it was mentioned in Hansard, which is the official publication of the House of Commons and House of Lords, that there was very little food being given to these kids. Very little food. You know, it beggars belief. It's as if Fagin is reincarnated. Old Fagin out of Oliver Twist has been reincarnated, you know. But
can you just I'm just a little bit confused. But why would that information be in Hansard, the Parliament? It's a Parliament website, isn't it?
Because Norman Fowler stood up one day in the House of Commons and wanted to know why a convicted paedophile, namely Roger Gleaves, was it was acceptable to pay this man to use public resources, almost employing him, if you like, almost employing him to take homeless children. I mean, it was a scandal in its day, for an MP to stand up back in them days and to actually attack, and it weren't even the opposition they were attacking, it was attacking the council, it was unheard of, really,
So Norman Fowler brought something up, so did anything come from that, from Norman Fowler standing up in Parliament?
No, because it was after that he got arrested, after the Johnny Go Home DVD was put out. That's the reason it was brought up in the first place. Again, everything was covered up and brushed under because, in the sense that, Gleaves was already convicted. No harm could come to anybody. Do you know what I'm saying? But while he was out and free, he was allowed to do what he wanted. Now, when he came out of that prison sentence, he did it again. I mean, he was actually found in bed with 2 children. Him and his co-accused at the time, Roger Becker,
Richard
Becker. Right now, Richard Becker was a very close confidant of Sidney Cook. So, straight away, not just him. There was also another man called John Simmons, friends with Sidney Cook, partners with Roger Gleaves. Now, people might say again, coincidence. No, I don't believe in coincidences. Worst kind, Roger Gleaves is. He's the worst kind. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Seriously, I don't know if I should be saying this, you know what I mean? But I'd happily slit that fucker's throat. I really would. I'd do it now. Mm-hmm. I'd end his days now if he's still, I don't even know if he's still alive. No one can even tell me whether he's still alive or not. But I would. I'd cut his throat.
This is Roger Gleaves you're talking about, yeah?
Absolutely.
When you do say that, though, when you say you can link Roger Gleaves with who was in bed with Richard Becker, who's linked to the Sidney Cook, I mean, that there in itself to the gang with it's a link, and then we can link him to who's this guy who were arrested all the time, James Shackleton.
James Shackleton, yeah. Well, listen, let me tell you something about them two, right? I was gonna talk about that before, but got sidetracked. I'm always getting sidetracked on crap, right? I'm gonna give you a list of some companies here, right? You've got Arbitration Company, which is a private detective agency down in Portsmouth. You've got Nemesis Debt Collection Agency. You've got Mephistophil's Debt Collection Agency, Omega Security, GB Security, Euston Trust. Right now, to the uneducated, it means absolutely nothing. But Argus Investigations was a company, a private detective company. It was run by a man called Andrew Rogers, who, again, was a convicted paedophile. Not only was a convicted paedophile, he was engaged to be married to Roger Gleaves. They met in Wandsworth Prison. One of the directors of Argos Investigations was actually down as the Nemesis Debt Collection Agency.
Unbelievable.
Now, Nemesis, like I mentioned earlier on, was run by Roger Gleaves and James Shackleton. Mephistophil's was run by Roger Gleaves and a man named Terence Ewing. Now, I'm not accusing Terence Ewing of being a paedophile. I'm not. But he was involved in corruption on a very, very huge scale. Now, like I said, Terence Ewing and Roger Gleaves, and also a man named Keith Hamerton, who was a paedophile from Battersea. He was a convicted paedophile again, and he worked at an assessment centre in Surrey. Now, Hamerton was in partnership with Terence Ewing at the Euston Trust. Terence Ewing was in partnership with Roger Gleaves at the Mephistophil's Debt Collection Agency. Right? Now, Terence Ewing was also the top Mackenzie friend. Now, Mackenzie friends are people that go to court to get children out of. That's the majority of the stuff that Mackenzies do. They help people get their children back that have been stolen by social services or whatever like that. Now, why is a man that does that in partnership with two known paedophiles? You've got to ask yourself that question. Actually, in partnership with them, business, making money with them. You know, he weren't using them to find out stuff. He was using them to make money. Now, all this is, like I say, public domain. There's documents to prove it. I can, everything I've told you tonight, I can supply you with documents to prove it. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's many people out there that are probably thinking, not thinking, the likes of Brian Clare. Everything that I'm telling you now, Brian Clare knows all this stuff. Yeah. He knows all this stuff. You know, much respect to Brian, you know what I'm saying? Now, in fairness, some of those companies, Roger Gleaves used false names. Now, these are all aliases that I can prove are Roger Gleaves. He obviously used his own name, Roger Gleaves, to start with. He used the name Raymond Bryan. He church, and that was the church that Roger Gleaves became ordained into. Now, he actually stole Barrington Evans' name to use later on while he was getting up to his filth, you know. It just proves that, you know, it just goes to prove his deviousness. Now, when he was with Amiga Services, when he was with Amiga Security, he called himself Raymond Bryan. When he was with GB Security, he called himself Adam Smith. But surprisingly, with Nemesis and Mephistopheles, he kept his name Roger Gleaves. And, again, documented evidence, there's plenty of it. You type in Nemesis into the Google bar, it will take you to the company check, click on directors, there you go. Roger Charles or Augustine Gleaves and James Shackleton. It gives them, you know, I was so tempted to give you their address then. I've got their address and phone number. I spoke to James Shackleton on the phone. I phoned him up. I pretended to arrange a funeral, and I wanted information out of him. And some of the stuff that he actually told me about his friend at there's another, because he's not, apparently, according to him, he's not an undertaker anymore. He works with memorials. But he was quite happy to tell me how the funeral was going to take place, the card he was going to use, and everything else. And his friend Roger, coincidence? I don't know. But his friend Roger was going to do the funeral for me. Right. That would have been an interesting fucking meeting, wouldn't it?
Well, we all do barra jobs from time to time, don't we, Bernie? So maybe it was just a little cash job that he thought he'd do on the side, you know.
You don't do what has scared me though is where he got the fucking wood from.
Yeah, outside Jill Dando's house.
Yeah. Load of twigs glued together with super glue, no doubt. Anyway.
That has to be the dumbest excuse of all time, though. I was collecting wood for my own coffins. What?
And bear in mind, when you say that, I've seen the Mirror article in which he claims to... It says something like, I must have a guilty face. Is that right, Bernie?
That's exactly what he said. He said he had a guilty face, and that's why he keeps getting into trouble. He doesn't do nothing. He's never murdered anyone, especially Jill Dando.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How can you not murder anybody, especially somebody, a particular individual?
Assassination from the Kosovo War that was happening at the time. They were trying to say that it was because of the coverage she was doing on the Kosovo War that she was assassinated, because it was so clear of an assassination the way it happened. They were trying to find out, like, an excuse for an assassination. So that's very interesting.
So, Bernie, do you want to talk about what you were telling... I don't know if you spoke about it yet, because I missed the first bit, but what you were telling me earlier on about Dennis Nielsen. What's Dennis Nielsen's link in all this?
It's funny you say that, because I was just about to get to that. I've actually got it on my page here, look. Right, now, you remember I was telling you about about Charles Hornby and Malcolm Raywood, and they had their convictions quashed, and they was working Piccadilly, and you know, they were doing a very similar sort of thing to what Roger Blease was doing, in fairness. You know, they were picking up runaways. But there was also a man called Abraham Jacobs. Now, he was that notorious that he actually ended up being called Uncle Abe. You know, he actually got his own nickname in the meat rack. Right now, he started, from what I can gather, he started in 1975 and he wasn't arrested until 1986. Now, Operation Circus was running in this time, and Operation Circus managed to arrest Charles Hornby and everyone else, whereas Abraham Jacobs was very, very blatant. He took them into the Wimpy, took children into the Wimpy, brought burgers and chips and stuff, and
put them on display in the window.
Absolutely. He rented them out to business people. Where Dennis Nilsson comes into it is the link with Abraham Jacobs, because it has been alleged that Abraham Jacobs supplied children to Dennis Nilsson. Now, I'm going to be honest with you here. I can't tell you too much about the Dennis Nilsson link, and the reason I can't tell you too much about it is because a friend of mine, when I was telling him about it, he actually got back to me and said that the police were actually interviewing Dennis Nilsson as they'd been up to the prison to interview him about the murder of his brother. So I don't want to risk.
Of course not. But why don't you tell people who might not know who Dennis Nilsson is? Tell us.
Dennis Nilsson was a notorious mass murderer. A homosexual mass murderer. Now, the reason I say homosexual is because he had a penchant for young men, and they weren't necessarily children, but they were late teenagers, early 20s, and he'd do things to them. He'd have sex with them, but then he'd murder them. He murdered them, and he'll never get out of prison. He was sentenced to life, and he will never ever leave prison.
He was the subject.
But Abraham Jacobs, there is evidence to suggest, and again, it's documented evidence, that Abraham Jacobs actually passed these people on to Dennis Nilsson.
Right. Killing for Company, that was the book that was written about Nilsson, or one of the books that was written about Nilsson, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've read that book. It's a pretty decent book, but it sort of suggests that he was a lonely, homosexual man in the middle of London, and what he'd do is they claimed that he was afraid that they'd walk off, so he'd kill them to keep them there, and he'd sleep with the corpses as well.
Yeah. It's quite bizarre because at the time the Dennis Nilsson was apprehended, I was actually living in Switzerland. Now, I saw that in the newspaper, but the story, because I believe it was about 13 people that he was convicted of murdering, the story that I was told in the Swiss newspaper was that he killed and eaten 13 policemen.
Jesus.
Hamish Campbell weren't one, was he?
Sadly, I'm afraid not.
No, I know where he is. He's in Jamaica, covering up murders in Jamaica now. Right. Anyway, there's one other little bit about Abraham Jacobs, who I was just telling you about. Mm-hmm. He was also a social worker, both adult. He worked with vulnerable adults, and he also worked in a children's home in Battersea. Mm-hmm. Now, he was convicted later of what had gone off in the meat rack. Yeah. You know, but the point I was trying to make with you is that how comes he was on a daily basis doing this stuff, but the likes of Hornby and Raywood and them, they were picked up by this operation. To me, I honestly think, because of what the stuff that I have seen, and like I say, I mean, I've got to be careful what I say, because I don't want to spoil the chances of him being involved, you know, getting arrested for being involved in this other thing. But all these operations, they were watching. There was police in Piccadilly. There was police out and about. They picked up enough evidence to arrest these people, but not Abraham Jacobs. And he was more blatant than anybody. Absolutely blatant about it. He sat them in a shop window and went out and got punters while these hungry kids were eating burger and chips.
Well, surely the suggestion there is that he was protected in some way.
I absolutely believe he was protected.
Either that, or he had some information on some rather senior police officers who might have been a customer of his.
Mm.
Well, there's many instances. There's many instances of this, and people saying about the police that have been involved in it. This is heartbreaking. This is sorry. One second.
Take a second.
All right,
Bernie. Mate. No problem.
Take your time,
Really
Bernie.
tough stuff. We can put on another. I was going to say we could put on another record, but we're into the last 15 minutes now, so we can talk amongst ourselves for a few minutes while Bernie just collects his thoughts there. Jason, sorry.
I was just going to clarify when I was talking about Jill Dando. My thoughts are that it was for the reasons that Bernie was talking about. But what I was talking about was the press at the time were trying to make up an excuse because it was so clear of an assassination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was an assassination. It was just going up to the doorstep and shooting her on the doorstep. So they were trying to make up this excuse that it was, she was reporting on Kosovo, so somebody sent an agent.
Yeah.
To assassinate her, which was ludicrous. It was absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, you don't tend to find war correspondents getting shot in the head on their own doorstep, do you, really?
She wasn't even reporting on anything that heavy, It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can go on all you're saying about this Kosovo connection, but let's be honest. You've got her co-presenter Nick Ross. Sorry,
yes.
Sorry, Jonathan, I didn't mean that. You've got Nick Ross. His relationship to Childline.
Mm-hmm.
Esther Ranson and I've forgotten her name now.
His wife,
that's
Campbell.
right.
She's called
That's
Campbell.
right. Right now, there's rumours about Childline and paedophiles. Nick Ross has been quoted as saying that he would watch child porn to see what the fuss was about. That is so disrespectful in so many ways. You know what I mean? It's almost fucking criminal.
Well, it is criminal.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what about Jill Dando's boyfriend, her fiance, who went on to become the royal gynecologist?
Almost like rewarded for services there.
Who knows?
But I think that it's such a big cover-up. They had to come up with an excuse for the clear assassination, and it was ludicrous the excuse they came up with.
I think it's obvious. Just before I go, because I know we ain't got long left. There's also something else that I wanted to tell you. It's to go back to the thing with Bullet for Sight, because I don't think I actually got the whole thing out. In fairness, because I'm going to give you some names. I'm going to mention names now that were involved in a Bullet for Sight thing.
Yeah, I think
I told you about what had happened underneath the town hall.
The dungeon there. Yeah.
Right. Well, the Daily Mirror have evidence of all this. There was actually an inquiry. Detective, I think it was the Chief Inspector or Superintendent Clive Driscoll. He had enough evidence against some of the top people. Now he took his findings to his boss, and he was taken off the case. Now when I mentioned some of the names that he came across, he linked Islington to Lambeth through Margaret Hodge. Margaret Hodge was one of the people that was on his thing. There was Labour leader of Lambeth Council, Ted Knight. Now, when I'm saying that they knew, I'm talking about they knew what was going on and covered it up. I'm not accusing these two of actual paedophilia. You know what I'm saying? But, if you know it's going on in that position, now remember, Margaret Hodge was the leader of Islington Council. Now, if Clive Driscoll was listened to, her career would have been over. But he wasn't listened to, and she went on to become the children's minister in Tony Blair's government. You've got former Prime Minister himself, Tony Blair, that was on this thing. I think you find that his name was called Charles Linton at the time. Keith Vaz, his name was on there. He was the man that was meant to be protecting the children. He was the legal officer. You know what I mean? His job was to look after all the children in care, all their legal needs. You know what I'm saying? He was responsible for all that.
I think Mr.
Margaret
Vaz
Hodges' husband.
I think Mr. Vaz got quite a shock when he met Mickey Summers face to face in the Houses of Parliament the other week. I wouldn't mind have been flying on the wall for that one.
Well, no disrespect to Mickey Summers, but if you've actually met Mickey Summers, then you'll understand why you got a shock. Mickey takes no prisoners, let me tell you. Getting back to what I was saying, now Margaret Hodges' husband was a man called Henry Hodge. Now he was the chairman of the National Council for Civil Liberties, which is actually known as Liberty now.
And they were in bed with Pye.
Well, yes, they were. Now I'm going to the people that were in charge of the National Council for Civil Liberties. I'm going to call them, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to call them Henry Hodges' sidekicks. One was called Harriet Harman. Her husband was called Jack Dromey, and one of the other ones was Patricia Hewitt. Now, including Margaret Hodge, all of them became senior cabinet ministers in the Labour government run by Tony Blair. All apart from Henry Hodge, but he was given a knighthood for his services. And, you know, question is, what were his services? You know, because at the end of the day, this Pye incorporated a lot of the names that I've mentioned tonight. Now, Pye itself was a group of paedophiles or paedophile lovers. Give it whatever name you want to call them. They're paedophile lovers. They're nonce lovers. Yeah. Now, Pye was given money by the government. They were given in excess of £70,000 at one. That's one quote that I've seen. Pye wanted to drop the age of legal consent. Now wait for it. I'm sure some of you know what it is anyway. They wanted to drop the age of legal consent to have sex with children years old.
It's 4 years old.
4 years old. Babies. We're talking about babies.
Yep.
You know, we're not just talking about a 15-year-old that could look 18 or 19. We're talking about obvious babies here. And they even, you know, you've got the likes of John Carroll, Tom O'Carroll, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone saw 60 Minutes the other week. I mean, he blatantly sat there and couldn't see what the problem was with having sex with children as long as it wasn't penetrative. I'm sorry, it's not acceptable. We will not accept it. We will go out on the streets and we will do whatever we can, whatever we have to do. There's many people out there that think like me, and I'm telling you now, this country's in for a big shock.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a demon from another dimension, that Tom O'Carroll.
Yeah.
He's not the only one. He's not the only one. There's a lot of them.
You wouldn't believe somebody would go on TV and say that stuff.
By the way,
Tom,
can I just butt in there? Because there is another person that I failed to mention who was convicted, who was on the paedophile information list, on the paedophile information exchange, was a man named Sir Peter Heyman. Does he ring a bell to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a tad.
He was the head of MI6.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gleaves is on there, isn't he? He's number 39.
Yeah, Gleaves is 39. You've got Janner who's 57.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is the man, he never done anything, but he's on the paedophile information exchange list at number 57. So you tell me, you know, I'm not on the paedophile information exchange list, and I know I've never done anything like that. So, you know, why is he on it?
Absolutely. Bernie and Jason, I'd like to thank you both very much for coming on tonight. You're incredibly brave with the stuff that you talk about and put out there for the public to know about. And we're going to have to wind things up because Graham Hart's coming up shortly. Have you got anything you'd like to final few closing remarks, Bernie?
Yeah, there is.
Any groups you want to give out the links to or the protests coming up?
There's 3 protests coming up. On November 11:30, Burton Street in Wakefield. It's one for Kaz. Kaz and Mickey Summers are doing one. On the 12th of September at 11 o'clock, Hayley Weston is doing one in Liverpool at the World Museum. And I've got to say the big one because it probably will be more people there at Westminster on Parliament Square, 10 o'clock on the 12th of September. There was meant to be more, but I haven't got the details of them all, so I can't. But then them three are definitely going ahead.
People need to find Unite Against Abuse on Facebook. There's plenty of groups, isn't there? Unite Against Abuse.
Oh, yeah. There's United Against Child Abuse for different places. They've got them all over the place. It's not just one group, although they are united. There's many different groups, and I think people in different counties will actually find that they've got one for their area. You know, Liverpool's got one, Glasgow's got one, Wales has got one, Yorkshire's got one. I'm the admin in the Yorkshire one. So anyone that's listening now that lives in the Yorkshire area, you know, I'll add you. It's fine. Just come along. You're on. There's Unite as One. That's another group that I belong to that fight child abuse. There's many of them. You've got Kaz's group, United Halifax, Mickey Summers Nottingham group. You know, there are so many. There's too many to even think. I've got so much shit going on in my head at this precise moment, and I'm really sorry.
No problem at all, Bernie.
Absolutely. You've done incredibly well, mate. And thanks ever so much for coming on. I hope you'll be able to come and join us sometime again in the future. And Jason, wish you well, and I hope things start turning out a bit better for you. Tom, have you got anything to say before we spin a little tune?
Just once again, thank you, Bernie, for coming on. We look forward to talking to you the next time. Even if you just come on for half an hour or an hour, the information is... nobody's going to put out that information as good as you have tonight. So thank you very much for coming on once again. Please check out the Facebook page. It's Enemy Within Radio, all one word. Or if you're searching, it's best to search Enemy_Within. And it's at Enemy Within Talk on Twitter. And when are we back? We're back Friday.
Yeah, we're back Friday.
peoplesinternetradio.com with...
I believe we've got Andrew Fletcher, who'll be talking to us about some fascinating research he's done on inclined bed therapy, and also he'll be giving out some information for anyone who happens to suffer from migraines. So we'll see you then, folks.